They say you can't fall in love with someone in a single glance. That real connection takes time, shared experiences, common ground. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes love doesn't ask permission. It doesn't check your bank account or measure the distance between your worlds. It just strikes sudden and electric the moment you step through the wrong door at exactly the right time. My name is Alyssa Ward, and this is the story of how I fell in love with a woman I had no business falling for. A woman whose mansion had more rooms than my entire apartment building. A woman who lived in magazines while I lived paycheck to paycheck. A woman who should have been completely, impossibly out of reach. But here's what I learned. The heart doesn't care about impossible. I was 29 years old the day I learned that some doors don't just open to new rooms, they open to entirely different lives. It was a Thursday morning in late September, the kind where autumn hadn't quite made up its mind yet. The air carried that strange mixture of summer's last warmth and the first whisper of cold that makes you question whether you need a jacket. I had chosen wrong that morning, wearing only my worn work shirt with Ward Electric embroidered on the pocket, the stitching coming loose at one corner. My father had started that business 30 years ago, and I'd inherited it along with his debts, his old truck, and his belief that honest work was the only kind worth doing. The address on my work order seemed wrong when I first saw it. 1447 Belmont Heights Drive. That wasn't a neighborhood, it was a postcode for a different species of human being. The kind who had gates instead of doors, grounds instead of yards, staff instead of family dinners around cramped kitchen tables. My truck coughed and sputtered as I drove up the winding road, past houses that looked like they'd been photographed for magazines, which, I would later learn, many of them had been. Each estate sat behind walls or hedges or iron fencing, as if wealth needed to be contained, protected, kept separate from the world where people like me bought groceries on sale and counted pennies for gas. When I reached 1447, I had to stop and stare. The mansion, because that's what it was. Nothing less, rose behind iron gates like something out of a period drama. 3 stories of pale stone, tall windows that caught the morning light like crystal, and a circular driveway that could have fit 6 of my apartments inside it. The gates themselves were works of art, wrought iron twisted into elaborate patterns of vines and flowers. I sat in my truck for a full minute, my hands still on the steering wheel, wondering if I should just turn around. This had to be a mistake. People who lived in places like this didn't call small operations like Ward Electric. They had companies on retainer, probably with pristine white vans and uniforms that actually fit. But the work order was clear, and I needed this job. My bank account had hit that dangerous territory where you start doing math in your head every time you buy coffee. So I took a breath, grabbed my toolbox from the passenger seat, its handle wrapped in duct tape because I couldn't afford to replace it, and pressed the button on the intercom mounted beside the gate. Yes? A woman's voice came through, crisp but not unkind. Alyssa Ward, from Ward Electric. I'm here about the circuit problem. There was a pause, then a buzz, and the gates began to swing open with a whisper of expensive machinery. My truck's engine coughed again as I drove through, and I found myself apologizing to the driveway for bringing such a decrepit vehicle onto its pristine surface. I parked off to the side, trying to make my truck as invisible as possible, and walked to the front door. It was massive. Dark wood with brass fixtures that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Before I could find a doorbell, the door opened, and there she was. I'd like to say I kept my composure, that I was professional and unaffected, but that would be a lie, and this story deserves truth. Serena Hale stood in the doorway, and the word beautiful felt insufficient. She was tall, with dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, wearing white linen pants and a silk blouse the color of champagne. But it wasn't just her looks. Plenty of people are attractive. It was something else, the way she held herself, maybe, like she knew exactly who she was, and made no apologies for it, like she inhabited her space with complete certainty. She was probably in her mid-30s, though wealth has a way of making age harder to guess. Her skin was flawless, her nails perfectly manicured, and when she smiled at me, I forgot for a second why I was standing there. You must be Miss Ward, she said, extending her hand. Her voice matched her appearance, smooth, cultured, the kind of voice that had never had to raise itself to be heard. I'm Serena Hale. Thank you so much for coming on such short notice. I shook her hand, acutely aware of my own calluses, the motor oil I could never quite scrub from under my nails, the gap between us that was measured in more than just the doorway threshold. Just Alyssa is fine, I managed. And no problem. Your message said something about flickering lights in the West Wing? She laughed, and it was genuine, not mocking. West Wing. God, that sounds so pretentious when you say it out loud. Yes. The lights in my office and the rooms above it have been flickering for 3 days. My assistant called 4 other companies, but no one could come until next week. Small operation, I said, lifting my toolbox slightly. More flexible schedule. Usually. Well, I appreciate your flexibility. She stepped back, gesturing for me to come inside. Please, come in. I stepped into another world. The entryway alone was larger than my entire apartment. Marble floors stretched in all directions, reflecting light from a chandelier that hung overhead like a frozen waterfall of crystal. A sweeping staircase curved up to the second floor, its railing polished to a gleam. Fresh flowers, real ones, elaborate arrangements sat on tables that looked like antiques. I tried not to gape. I failed. I know, Serena said. And there was something almost apologetic in her tone. It's a lot. My parents built this place 30 years ago. Sometimes I think they were compensating for something. I looked at her, surprised by the candor. She smiled again, softer this time. Come on, the office is this way. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm good, thank you. Are you sure? I just made a fresh pot, and I always make too much. There was something in the way she asked, not like an employer offering refreshment to a worker, but like a person hoping for company. I found myself nodding before I'd decided to. Coffee would be great, actually. Thank you. Her whole face brightened. Perfect. Follow me. She led me through corridors lined with art, real art, the kind behind glass with little lights illuminating it, and into a kitchen that belonged in a culinary magazine. All marble and stainless steel, with an island in the center big enough to land a plane on. Serena moved to the coffee maker with easy familiarity, pulling down 2 mugs, actual mugs, not fine china, and pouring coffee that smelled like it cost more per pound than I made per hour. Cream? Sugar? Black is perfect. She handed me the mug, and our fingers brushed for just a second. I told myself the flutter in my chest was from the caffeine I hadn't yet consumed. So, she said, leaning against the counter with her own mug. How long have you been an electrician? About 7 years professionally. But I grew up helping my dad with his business, so basically my whole life. That's wonderful. Learning a trade from a parent, there's something special about that. I took a sip of coffee to buy myself time. It was incredible coffee. What about you? I mean, I know well, everyone knows about Hale Designs. It was true. Serena Hale's interior design empire was legendary in the city. Her work had been featured in every major magazine, and her client list reportedly included celebrities, politicians, and people whose names appeared on buildings. Something flickered across her face, not quite sadness, but close. Yes, well, that's the business side. The truth is, I just like making spaces feel like home. Everything else. She waved her hand vaguely. It got complicated. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I was here to work. Not pry into the personal life of a woman so far out of my league we weren't even playing the same sport. Should I take a look at that electrical problem? I asked instead. Of course. Yes. She set down her mug and gestured for me to follow. I'm sorry. I'm keeping you from your work. I just don't get much. I mean, most people who come here are staff or business associates. It's nice to have a normal conversation. Normal. The word struck me as odd coming from her. In this palace of a house, wearing clothes that cost more than my truck. But as I followed her to the office, I realized she'd meant it. And stranger still, I'd felt it too. In that kitchen, drinking coffee, we'd just been 2 people talking. No mansion, no toolbox, no gulf of difference between us, just 2 people. The office was on the first floor, a large room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking immaculate gardens. The desk was antique, the shelves lined with design books and awards. But what caught my attention were the lights' expensive recessed fixtures that were, indeed, flickering intermittently. Started 3 days ago? I asked, setting down my toolbox. Yes. At first I thought it was just one bulb, but then it spread to the whole room and the bedrooms upstairs. I nodded, already running through possibilities in my head. Mind if I check your electrical panel? Not at all. It's in the basement. I'll show you. The basement, of course, was finished and organized like everything else in the house. The electrical panel was tucked behind a door marked clearly. And when I opened it, I immediately saw the problem. You've got a loose neutral wire, I said, pointing to the connection. See this? It's creating an intermittent connection, which causes the flickering, probably from the house settling over time, or just age. How old is the wiring? The house is 30 years old, and I don't think anything's been updated. That's your problem right there. This wire needs to be reconnected properly, and honestly, you should probably have the whole panel inspected. 30-year-old connections can develop issues. Can you do that? The inspection? Yeah, but it'll take a couple hours. I'd need to check all the circuits, make sure everything's secure and up to code. Please, do whatever you need to do. I'll be upstairs if you need anything. She started to leave, then paused at the bottom of the stairs. Alyssa? Thank you. Not just for fixing this, but for the coffee. For talking to me like a person. Before I could respond, she was gone, her footsteps fading up the stairs. I stood there in the basement, tools in hand, wondering what had just happened. The inspection took 3 hours. I found several connections that needed tightening, replaced a couple of worn breakers, and made detailed notes about which circuits would need attention in the next few years. I worked methodically. The way my father had taught me, thorough, careful, treating every house like it mattered. When I finished, I found Serena in her office, staring at her computer screen with an expression that looked like she was trying to solve a problem that had no solution. All done, I said from the doorway, not wanting to startle her. She looked up, and I saw something I hadn't noticed before: exhaustion. The kind that sits behind the eyes and can't be hidden with good lighting or expensive skincare. That was fast, she said. Everything okay? Fixed the immediate problem and tightened up a bunch of other connections. You shouldn't have any more flickering. But I've made a list of things you'll want to address in the next year or two, nothing urgent, just preventive maintenance. You're very thorough. My dad always said measure twice, cut once. Same principle applies to electrical work: check everything twice, fix it right the first time. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Your father sounds like he was a wise man. Was. Yeah. I cleared my throat. Anyway, I'll email you the full report and the invoice. Should be pretty reasonable, mostly just labor and a couple of parts. Alyssa. Wait. She stood up, walking around her desk. I know this is probably unprofessional, and feel free to say no. But would you like to stay for lunch? I had my chef prepare too much food, as usual, and I'd really appreciate the company. Every reasonable part of my brain screamed that this was a bad idea, that I should politely decline, send my invoice, and go back to my world where things made sense. But I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something that cut through all the marble and silk and expensive everything. I saw loneliness, the kind I recognized because I'd seen it in my own mirror. I'd like that, I heard myself say. Her smile, this time, reached her eyes. Lunch was served in a sunroom that overlooked the gardens, glass walls on 3 sides, comfortable chairs, and a table set with simple elegance. The food was incredible. Fresh salads, grilled salmon, bread that was still warm. But what I remembered most was the conversation. We talked about everything and nothing. She asked about my work, and I found myself telling her stories about the strange things I'd found in people's walls: old love letters, children's drawings, once even a collection of vintage comic books. She laughed in all the right places, asked questions that showed she was actually listening. In turn, she told me about her work, about the satisfaction of transforming a space, about how color and light could change the way people felt in their own homes. That's what I love about it, she said, her eyes animated in a way they hadn't been before. Not the celebrity clients, or the magazine features. Those are just noise. What I love is when someone walks into a room I've designed, and their whole body relaxes. When they say, "This feels like home," that's when I know I've done something that matters. That's how I feel about electrical work, I said, surprising myself. When someone flips a switch and the light comes on exactly as it should, when everything works safely and smoothly, there's satisfaction in that, in being the person who makes things function. We're not so different then, she said softly. Both of us making sure things work the way they should. Our eyes met across the table, and something passed between us, a recognition. Maybe. A sense that this conversation, this moment, was more than it appeared to be. Serena, I said carefully. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really invite me to stay for lunch? She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her water glass. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because I'm tired of eating alone. I'm tired of conversations that are really negotiations. I'm tired of people who want something from me, or want to be seen with me but don't actually want to know me. She looked up, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. And you treated me like I was just another person. Do you know how rare that is? My heart was hammering in my chest. You are just another person, Serena. Not to most people. To most people, I'm Serena Hale, the brand. The business. The woman in the magazines. She laughed, but it was bitter. Do you know what my assistant asked me this morning? If I wanted her to schedule time for me to have lunch. Schedule time. For lunch. As if eating were just another appointment. I didn't know what to say to that. My world and hers were so different that I could barely comprehend what she was describing. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I shouldn't be dumping all this on you. You came here to fix my lights. Not be my therapist. Hey, I reached across the table, my hand stopping just short of hers. It's okay. Really. Sometimes we all need someone to just listen. She looked at my hand, hovering near hers, and something in her expression shifted. Slowly, carefully, she placed her hand over mine. Thank you. Alyssa, she whispered. We sat like that for a moment, her hand on mine, the afternoon sun streaming through the glass walls, the rest of the world feeling very far away. Then her phone rang, shattering the moment like dropped crystal. She pulled away, answering with a brisk, "Serena Hale." That was all business. I watched as her whole demeanor changed, shoulders straightening, voice cooling, that mask of professional competence sliding back into place. When she hung up, she looked exhausted again. I'm sorry, I have to take a meeting. Business crisis that apparently can't wait. Of course. I stood, gathering my toolbox. I should get going anyway. She walked me to the door, and at the threshold, she hesitated. Alyssa? Would it be okay if I called you again? If anything else needs fixing? We both knew that wasn't really what she was asking. Yeah, I said, my voice rough. Yeah, that would be okay. She smiled, and it was like sunlight breaking through clouds. I drove away from that mansion with my heart doing strange things in my chest, knowing I should forget about this, forget about her, forget about the way she'd looked at me across that table. But I also knew I couldn't. Because sometimes lightning strikes exactly where it shouldn't, setting fire to everything you thought you knew about your life. And all you can do is watch it burn. The week that followed felt like living in two different dimensions simultaneously. In one dimension, I went about my normal life responding to service calls, replacing outlets in cramped apartments, rewiring ancient fuse boxes in buildings that should have been condemned decades ago. I drove my coughing truck through familiar streets, ate microwaved dinners in my small apartment, paid bills that always seemed to arrive faster than the money to cover them. But in the other dimension, the one that occupied every spare corner of my mind, I couldn't stop thinking about her. About the way Serena had looked at me across that table. About her hand covering mine, warm and certain. About the loneliness I'd seen in her eyes that mirrored something in my own chest I'd been trying to ignore for years. I told myself it was ridiculous, that I was reading into things that weren't there, that a woman like Serena Hale didn't develop feelings for her electrician after one conversation, no matter how intimate it had felt. But then, 6 days after I'd left her mansion, my phone rang. Alyssa, it's Serena Hale. My heart jumped into my throat. I was sitting in my truck outside a hardware store, sweaty and tired from a morning spent in an attic that felt like the surface of the sun. Hi, I managed, trying to sound professional and casual simultaneously, achieving neither. Is everything okay with the electrical work? What? Oh yes, everything's fine. Perfect. Actually. She paused, and I could hear something in the background music. Maybe. Or voices. I'm calling because, well, there's something else that needs looking at. In the library, some of the outlets aren't working. Okay, I can come by tomorrow afternoon if... Could you come today? She said it quickly, almost urgently. I know it's last minute, and if you can't, I understand. But I'm leaving for New York tomorrow morning, and I'd really like to have it fixed before I go. Something in her tone told me this wasn't really about outlets. I can be there in an hour, I said. Perfect. Thank you, Alyssa. Really. When I arrived at the mansion, the gates opened before I even pressed the intercom. Serena must have been watching for me. She met me at the door wearing jeans, actual jeans, faded and comfortable, and a simple t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore no makeup that I could detect. She looked younger this way, more vulnerable, and somehow even more beautiful. That was fast, she said, smiling. Slow day, I lied. I'd actually rescheduled 2 other appointments. Come in. The library's upstairs. I followed her through the house, noticing details I'd missed the first time. Photographs on tables, Serena with various people at various events, all of them looking posed and formal. Awards and plaques on shelves, everything perfectly arranged, perfectly curated, perfectly empty of the casual chaos that makes a house feel lived in. The library was on the 2nd floor, a large room with built-in shelves covering every wall, filled with books that actually looked read. A leather couch sat near the windows, and a reading lamp arched over it like a question mark. So which outlets aren't working? I asked, setting down my toolbox. Serena walked to the far wall, gesturing vaguely at an outlet near the baseboard. These ones. And maybe those by the window? I'm not actually sure. I pulled out my voltage tester and checked the outlet. It worked perfectly. So did the ones by the window. So did every other outlet in the room. Serena, I said slowly, turning to face her. There's nothing wrong with any of these outlets. She stood in the center of the room, her arms wrapped around herself, looking suddenly nervous in a way that made my chest ache. I know, she said quietly. I'm sorry, I wanted to see you again, and I couldn't think of another reason that wouldn't sound completely insane. The honesty of it hit me like a physical force. You don't need a reason, I said, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. You could have just called and asked. Could I have? She looked at me with those dark eyes, and I saw fear there alongside the longing. Could I really have just called and said, Hi, Alyssa, I can't stop thinking about you. Would you like to come over? What would you have thought? I would have thought. I took a step toward her, my heart hammering. I would have thought that I wasn't the only one who's been going crazy this past week. Her breath caught. You've been thinking about me? Constantly. Annoyingly. I've probably rewired the same junction box 3 times because I keep losing focus and having to start over. A laugh escaped her, half relief and half disbelief. I've been staring at color swatches for 4 days and can't make a single decision because all I can think about is the way you looked at me when we had lunch. We stood there, maybe 6 feet apart, the air between us crackling with everything we weren't quite saying. This is crazy, I said. You know that, right? This whole thing, it's completely crazy. I know. She took a step toward me. I've been trying to talk myself out of it for 6 days, listing all the reasons it's a terrible idea. Why it could never work, why I should just forget about you and move on with my life. Did it work? Not even a little bit. Another step. We were close now, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive that made my head swim. Alyssa, I don't know what this is, or where it could possibly go. I just know that I haven't felt this alive in years, maybe ever. Serena. My voice was barely a whisper. I fix lights for a living. I drive a truck that's held together with hope and duct tape. I live in a 400-square-foot apartment where I can hear my neighbors' every conversation through the walls. Your world and mine, they don't even overlap. I don't care about any of that. You should care. People will judge you. They'll say things. Your business associates, your friends, whoever, they're going to see you with someone like me and make assumptions. Bad ones. Let them. She reached out, her fingers brushing against mine, and electricity, real, actual electricity, seemed to arc between us. I've spent my entire life caring what other people think, building the right image, making the right connections, saying the right things. And you know what it's gotten me? A beautiful house that feels like a museum, and a business that's supposed to be thriving, but feels like a prison. What do you mean, supposed to be thriving? She pulled back slightly, her expression clouding. Can we sit? There's something I need to tell you. We sat on the leather couch, and she angled herself toward me, her knee almost touching mine. Remember I mentioned a business crisis on the phone last week? She took a deep breath. My business partner, the woman who helped me build Hale Designs from nothing, has been embezzling from the company for at least 2 years. Maybe longer. My accountant discovered it 3 weeks ago. Jesus, Serena. It gets worse. She didn't just steal money. She's been sabotaging projects, bad-mouthing me to clients, trying to position herself to push me out of my own company. Her voice cracked slightly. I trusted her completely. She was one of my closest friends, or I thought she was. I didn't think. I just reached out and took her hand. She gripped it like a lifeline. I'm so sorry, I said. I can't even imagine. The lawyers say I'll probably win if we go to court, but it'll be ugly, public. Everything will be dragged through the media, and even if I win, the company I built will be tainted by scandal. She laughed bitterly. Funny how money and success are supposed to insulate you from problems, but they just create different ones. Is that why you said what you did last week? About being tired of conversations that are really negotiations? Yes. Everyone wants something, Alyssa. Everyone has an angle. My assistant wants career advancement. My remaining business associates want connections. The people I meet at events want to be photographed with me, or want introductions to my clients. Even my parents. She shook her head. They call once a month to remind me about the family legacy and ask when I'm going to settle down with someone appropriate. Appropriate, I repeated, tasting the word. Meaning wealthy. Wealthy. Connected. Probably male, though they're gracious enough not to explicitly say that part anymore. She turned to look at me fully. You asked me why I invited you to lunch that day. The truth is, when you were here working, fixing things, talking to me about your father and your work, you didn't want anything from me. You weren't performing, or calculating, or trying to impress me. You were just real. Do you know how precious that is? My throat felt tight. I'm not special, Serena. I'm just a person trying to get by. Exactly. You're just a person. Not a brand or an opportunity or a stepping stone. A person. Her thumb traced small circles on the back of my hand. When I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe. Like I can be just a person too. The moment stretched between us, heavy with possibility and danger and something that felt inevitable. I need to be honest with you, I said carefully. I'm not good at this. Relationships, feelings, any of it. I've dated, sure, but nothing serious, nothing that lasted. I've always been more comfortable with circuits and wires than people. Why? The question was simple, but the answer was complicated. I looked down at our joined hands, trying to find words for things I usually kept locked away. My mom left when I was 8, I said finally. Just packed a bag one day and walked out. My dad never really talked about it, but I could see what it did to him. How he built walls around himself, threw himself into work, kept everyone at arm's length. I swallowed hard. I guess I learned from his example. It's easier to keep people at a distance, safer. Oh, Alyssa. Her free hand came up to cup my cheek, turning my face toward hers. I'm sorry you learned that, but maybe we could both learn something different together. Like what? Like how to be brave enough to try. Her eyes searched mine. I know all the logical reasons this is a bad idea, but logic hasn't made me happy. Logic got me a successful business with a partner who betrayed me. Logic got me this beautiful house where I eat meals alone. Logic got me a life that looks perfect from the outside and feels empty on the inside. And you think I'm the answer to that? I couldn't keep the skepticism out of my voice. Serena, I'm a disaster. I eat cereal for dinner half the time. I haven't had a vacation in 3 years. I still have student loans from trade school. I'm not. She kissed me. It wasn't dramatic or overwhelming. It was soft, tentative, a question rather than an answer. Her lips brushed against mine for just a moment, and the whole world seemed to tilt on its axis. When she pulled back, her eyes were wide, uncertain. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. This time, I kissed her, and it was like something that had been wound tight inside my chest for years suddenly released. Her lips were soft and warm, and she made a small sound in the back of her throat that sent electricity racing down my spine. My hand came up to tangle in her hair, and hers gripped the front of my work shirt, pulling me closer. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against mine. Okay, she whispered. Okay, so that's definitely a thing. I laughed, the sound shaky. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. We sat there for a moment, neither of us moving, both of us trying to process what had just happened. I'm leaving for New York tomorrow, she said eventually. Business meetings related to the legal situation. I'll be gone for 5 days, okay? But when I get back... She pulled away just enough to look at me properly. When I get back, I want to see you again. Not as an electrician. Not as a favor. As, whatever this is. Serena, I know all the reasons you're going to list, she interrupted gently. The differences between us, the complications, the judgment, I know all of it. And I'm telling you I don't care. I can't care. Because for the first time in longer than I can remember, I feel something other than emptiness or anxiety or exhaustion. I feel possibility. I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who had everything money could buy and nothing it couldn't. This woman who had called me with a fake electrical problem just to have an excuse to see me again. This woman who was looking at me like I was the answer to a question she'd been asking for years. And I thought about my own life. The routine, the solitude, the walls I'd built that were very different from hers but just as isolating. The way I'd convinced myself that being alone was easier than risking the kind of pain my father had endured. Maybe we were both tired of being safe. Okay, I heard myself say. When you get back, we'll figure this out. Her smile was like sunrise. Yeah? Yeah, I squeezed her hand. But Serena, you need to understand something. I'm not going to fit into your world. I don't know which fork to use at fancy dinners. I don't own clothes without stains on them. I can't make small talk about art galleries or whatever it is people in your circles discuss. I don't care about any of that. You say that now. Alyssa. She brought both hands up to frame my face. I have spent my entire life in rooms full of people who know exactly which fork to use. They're boring and performative and exhausting. You're real. That's worth infinitely more. Your friends won't think so. Then they're not really friends, are they? She leaned in and kissed me again. Softer this time. Sweeter. When I get back from New York, let's go somewhere. Somewhere that's not here. Not this house, not my world or your world. Somewhere neutral. And we'll just talk. Get to know each other, without all the weight of expectation. Like a date? Exactly like a date. Her eyes sparkled with something I realized was hope. Have you ever been to the botanical gardens? Once, on a school field trip in 7th grade. They're beautiful in October. All the fall colors. We could walk, talk, just be two people spending time together. She hesitated. Would that be okay? Would it be okay? This woman, this brilliant, beautiful, complicated woman was asking me on a date. To the botanical gardens. Like we were normal people, with normal lives and normal chances at happiness. That would be more than okay, I said. The 5 days Serena was in New York were torture. I tried to focus on work, but I kept catching myself staring into space, my mind replaying that kiss over and over like a song stuck on repeat. I'd be halfway through installing a ceiling fan, and suddenly remember the way she'd looked at me, the softness of her lips, the small sound she'd made when I deepened the kiss. My best friend, Marcus, noticed immediately. Okay. What's going on? He asked on day 3. When we were grabbing lunch at our usual diner. Marcus and I had gone to trade school together, and he'd been there through every awkward phase of my life. You've been weird all week. I haven't been weird. You've been smiling at your phone. You never smile at your phone. Last month you threw it across the room because a client was demanding you come fix an outlet at 11 p.m. I took a bite of my sandwich, considering how much to tell him. Marcus was gay and had been out since high school, navigating his own complicated relationship landscape with a confidence I'd always envied. I met someone, I said finally. His eyebrows shot up. Wait, what? Alyssa Ward, notorious relationship avoider. Met someone? Don't make a big deal out of it. I'm absolutely making a big deal out of it. Who is she? How'd you meet? When do I get to interrogate her about her intentions? It's complicated. It's always complicated. That's what makes it interesting. He leaned forward, grinning. Come on, spill. So I told him. Not everything, not about the kiss, because that felt too private, too precious to share yet, but enough. About Serena, about the mansion, about the lunch and the conversation and the way she'd called me with a fake electrical problem. When I finished, Marcus was staring at me with his mouth slightly open. Let me get this straight, he said slowly. You're telling me that Serena Hale, the interior design mogul who was on the cover of Metropolitan Living last month, you're telling me she's into you? When you say it like that, it sounds insane. Because it is insane. Alyssa, do you understand who this woman is? She's royalty. Design royalty. I know who she is. And she wants to date you. We're going to the botanical gardens when she gets back from New York. Marcus sat back, shaking his head in disbelief. This is either going to be the most romantic thing ever, or a complete disaster. Thanks for the vote of confidence. I'm serious, Liz. His expression sobered. I'm happy for you. I am. But you need to be careful. Women like that, they live in a different world. What happens when she realizes you can't give her the lifestyle she's used to? What happens when her rich friends start making comments? What happens when she gets tired of slumming it? Slumming it? The word stung more than I wanted to admit. You know what I mean. Look, I hope I'm wrong. I hope this works out, and you two ride off into the sunset together. But I've seen what happens when people from different worlds try to make it work. The world has a way of pulling them apart. I wanted to argue, to defend what Serena and I had, except we didn't really have anything yet. Just a conversation, a lunch, a kiss, the barest beginning of something that might not survive contact with reality. I know, I said quietly. Believe me, I've thought of all of this, but you're doing it anyway, but I'm doing it anyway. Marcus reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then, I've got your back. Always. Even if it gets messy. Serena texted me every day she was in New York. They were small messages, nothing profound. Updates about her meetings, complaints about hotel coffee, a photo of the Manhattan skyline at sunset, but each one made my heart skip, and I found myself checking my phone constantly, waiting for the next one. On day 4, she called. Hey, she said, and I could hear exhaustion in her voice. I hope I'm not bothering you. You're not. How's New York? Expensive, exhausting, and full of lawyers who all talk in circles. She sighed. I miss home. I miss quiet. I miss... What? You. I miss you. The admission came out soft, almost shy. Is that crazy? We barely know each other. If it's crazy, we're both crazy. I was sitting in my truck outside a job site, and I pressed the phone closer to my ear like I could somehow bring her nearer. I've been thinking about you constantly. Yeah? Yeah. It's actually kind of annoying. I've been terrible at work. She laughed, and the sound eased something in my chest. I've been terrible too. I zoned out during a deposition today thinking about the botanical gardens. The gardens are that exciting? No, the company is. A pause. Alyssa? Yeah? When I get home, I don't want to play games or be cautious or pretend I don't feel what I feel. Life's too short for that, and I've wasted too much time already being who everyone else wanted me to be. My heart was hammering. What are you saying? I'm saying that I like you. Really like you. And I want to see where this goes. Complications and all. If that's what you want too. I closed my eyes, letting the weight of the moment settle over me. Every logical part of my brain was screaming that this was a bad idea, that I should protect myself, that getting involved with Serena Hale was asking for heartbreak. But there was another voice, quieter but insistent, the one that reminded me I'd been alone for years, that I'd chosen safety over possibility every single time, that maybe, just maybe, some things were worth the risk. That's what I want too, I said. I could hear her smile through the phone. Good, then it's a date. I land tomorrow at 6. Meet me at the Botanical Gardens Saturday morning. 10 a.m.? I'll be there. Saturday morning dawned clear and crisp, the kind of October day that feels like the world is showing off. I changed my outfit 4 times, finally settling on jeans without any visible stains, and a flannel shirt that was relatively new. I even attempted to do something with my hair beyond my usual ponytail, though the results were questionable. I arrived at the Botanical Gardens at 9:45, too nervous to be fashionably late. The entrance was framed by trees exploding in autumn colors, reds and golds and oranges that looked almost artificial in their intensity. I bought my ticket and waited by the main fountain, watching people filter past, families with children, elderly couples holding hands, a group of photographers with professional equipment, normal people living normal lives, unaware that my entire world was about to shift on its axis. At exactly 10 a.m., I saw her. Serena walked through the entrance wearing a simple dress the color of rust, with a denim jacket and boots that were stylish but practical. Her hair was down, catching the morning light, and she carried no purse, just her phone in her jacket pocket. When she saw me, her face transformed with a smile so genuine it hurt to look at. "Hi," she said, slightly breathless as she reached me. "Hi yourself." For a moment we just stood there, grinning at each other like idiots. "So," she said, "should we walk?" We should definitely walk. The gardens were spectacular in autumn. We wandered through paths lined with maples and oaks, past beds of late-blooming flowers, around ponds where ducks glided in lazy circles, and we talked, really talked. Serena told me about growing up in the mansion, about parents who loved her but were always working, always busy, always preparing her to take over the family legacy, about feeling like an investment rather than a daughter, about the pressure to be perfect, to represent the family name appropriately, to never embarrass them with failure or weakness. I told her about my father, about how he'd loved my mother so completely that when she left, it broke something fundamental in him, about growing up in a house full of silence, about learning to be independent because there was no other choice, about the scholarship that had saved me and the debt that had followed. "Do you ever see her?" Serena asked. "Your mother?" "No. She sent a card when my dad died. But that was it. I don't even know where she lives now." I kicked at a fallen leaf. I used to be angry about it. Now I'm just empty about it, I guess. Like it's a fact about my life rather than a wound. "I don't think wounds ever really stop being wounds," Serena said softly. "We just learn to walk with them." We walked in comfortable silence for a while, our shoulders occasionally brushing. "Can I ask you something?" I said eventually. "Anything." "Your business partner, the one who's been embezzling. When you told me about what she did." I wasn't sure how to ask this. Was there more than just business between you two? Serena was quiet for a long moment. "Yes," she said finally. "We were involved, briefly, years ago. Before the business really took off. It ended badly. She wanted something more serious. I wasn't ready, but we stayed friends. Or I thought we were friends. And then when I needed a business partner, she seemed like the obvious choice." She laughed bitterly. "I was so naive. I actually thought we'd moved past the personal stuff. I'm sorry." "Don't be. It taught me something important." She stopped walking and turned to face me. "It taught me that I have terrible judgment when it comes to relationships, that I choose people who want something from me rather than people who want me, that I'm attracted to ambition and polish, and all the things that look good on paper but don't actually matter. And what do you think matters?" She reached out and took my hand, her fingers threading through mine. "Honesty? Kindness. The way someone looks at you when they think you're not paying attention. The conversations that happen in the spaces between words." She squeezed my hand. "You matter, Alyssa. The way you are matters. My throat felt tight. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. This whole thing. I don't know the rules or how to be what you need. I don't need you to be anything except yourself. She stepped closer. And there are no rules. We make them up as we go. What if we mess it up? Then we mess it up. But at least we'll have tried. She smiled, and it was tremulous, hopeful, terrified. At least we'll have been brave enough to try. I pulled her to me then, unable to resist any longer. She came willingly, her arms wrapping around my waist, her head tucking perfectly under my chin. We stood there, in the middle of the path, holding each other while people walked around us and leaves drifted down like blessings. I'm scared, I whispered into her hair. Me too. Her arms tightened. But I think that means it matters. The things worth having are always scary. We spent hours in the gardens. We had lunch at the cafe, sharing sandwiches and laughing about the ducks that tried to steal food from neighboring tables. We found a quiet bench overlooking a pond and sat close together, her head on my shoulder, my hand in hers, not talking at all because words felt unnecessary. As the afternoon sun began to slant golden through the trees, Serena turned to me. Come to dinner, she said. At my house. Next Friday. Let me cook for you. You cook? I'm actually pretty good at it. It's one of the few normal things I do. She bit her lip. I want to show you that side of me. The parts that aren't the mansion or the business or any of the things people think they know about me. Serena. Please. I know it's my house, and that's part of the problem. Part of the world you're worried about. But it's also where I live. It's my space. And I want to share it with you properly. Not as a client. Not as someone fixing things. As someone She took a breath. As someone I'm falling for. The words hung in the air between us, huge and terrifying and true. Okay, I said, my voice rough. Friday. Dinner. I'll be there. Her smile was incandescent. The week crawled by. I worked on autopilot, my mind already at Friday, already wondering what would happen, how it would feel to be in her space, not as the electrician, but as something more. Marcus called me every day, alternating between excitement and concern. Have you thought about what happens after dinner? He asked on Thursday. What do you mean? I mean, Alyssa, you're going to her mansion for a romantic dinner. Presumably things might progress. Are you ready for that? I hadn't let myself think about it. Hadn't let myself imagine Serena's hands on my skin, her lips on mine, without the restraint of public spaces. Hadn't let myself picture what it would feel like to be wanted by someone like her. I don't know, I admitted. Just be careful with your heart, okay? That's all I'm saying. But I wasn't sure my heart had a choice anymore. Friday arrived with agonizing slowness. I closed up shop early, went home and showered, changed clothes 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a button-down shirt that Marcus had bought me last Christmas that I'd never had occasion to wear. I arrived at the mansion at 7, as Serena had requested. The gates opened immediately, and she met me at the door wearing jeans and a soft sweater, her feet bare, her hair in a messy bun. Hey, she said, and the smile she gave me was nervous and genuine. Come in. The house smelled different than before lived in. Warm, like garlic and herbs and something baking. She led me not to the formal dining room but to the kitchen, where the island was set for 2 with simple plates and wine glasses. I made pasta, she said, almost shy. Nothing fancy, just, it smells incredible. We ate and talked, and the conversation flowed as easily as it had in the gardens. She told me about a new project she was excited about. A community center renovation that would actually help people rather than just making rich clients richer. I told her about a complicated rewiring job I'd finished that week, about the satisfaction of solving a puzzle that had stumped 2 other electricians. After dinner, she led me to the sunroom where we'd had lunch that first day. The sun had set, and the room was lit softly by lamps. Music played quietly in the background, something acoustic and intimate. Dance with me, she said. I don't really dance. Neither do I. She held out her hand. Let's be terrible at it together. So we swayed together in that sunroom, barely moving, just holding each other while the music played and the night pressed against the glass walls. Her arms were around my neck, mine around her waist, and she felt perfect against me like something I'd been missing without knowing it. Alyssa, she murmured against my shoulder. I need to tell you something. Okay. She pulled back just enough to look at me, her eyes serious. I'm falling in love with you. I know it's too soon, and I know it's crazy, and I know we barely know each other, but it's true, and I needed you to know. My heart stopped, then started again. Faster. Serena. You don't have to say anything back. I just needed to be honest. To stop pretending this is casual or cautious when it doesn't feel that way at all. I looked at her, this brave, beautiful woman who'd had every reason to protect herself and had chosen vulnerability instead. Who'd looked past all the differences between us and seen something worth fighting for. I'm falling in love with you too, I said, the words feeling like jumping off a cliff. And yeah, it's terrifying, but it's also the most real thing I've felt in years. She kissed me then. And it was different from the kiss in the library. This one was certain, claiming, a promise and a question all at once. We stumbled back to the couch, her hands in my hair, mine at her waist, both of us breathing hard. When we finally broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. Stay, she whispered. Tonight. Just to sleep. Just to be close. I don't want you to leave. Every reasonable part of my brain screamed caution. But my heart had already made the decision. Okay, I said. I'll stay. She took my hand and led me upstairs, to a bedroom that was surprisingly simple, soft colors, comfortable furniture, windows that overlooked the gardens. Nothing ostentatious or excessive, just a room where a person slept. We lay down together, fully clothed, her back against my chest, my arm around her waist, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt completely at peace. Thank you, she whispered into the darkness. For what? For being brave enough to let me in. I pressed a kiss to her shoulder. Thank you for being brave enough to call me. We fell asleep like that. Two people from different worlds who'd somehow found each other in the space between. And if there were storms coming, and there would be, at least we'd face them together. At least we'd been brave enough to try. Looking back now, I realize that night was just the beginning. The beginning of something beautiful. Something complicated. Something worth every risk we'd have to take. Because love, real love, doesn't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect circumstances. It just arrives, uninvited and undeniable, and asks if you're brave enough to say yes. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you that love can find us in the most unexpected places, I'd be grateful if you'd like and share it. Your support helps stories like mine reach others who might need to hear them, who might need to know that sometimes the heart chooses the most impossible person, and that choice can be the most right thing in the world. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever fallen for someone you thought was completely out of your reach? Someone who made no logical sense, but every emotional sense? Have you ever had to choose between playing it safe and taking a leap into the unknown? Thank you for walking this journey with me. For feeling what I felt. For believing that love can bridge any distance, even the distance between two different worlds. Sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to make the call, and another brave enough to answer.